Lucy, thanks for joining us as well. So, can I ask the live stream is started? Thank you very much. So, welcome to this meeting of the Audit and Governance Committee being held on Tuesday the 28th of October. For those present in the meeting room, if the fire alarm sounds, please leave the building by the nearest exit and make your way to the fire assembly point in the car park. The agenda papers and other relevant information for this meeting are available for public viewing on the Herefordshire Council website. The Council is streaming this meeting live on the Herefordshire Council YouTube channel and is making a recording. Others are permitted to film, photograph and record public meetings provided it does not disrupt the business of the meeting. If there are any members of the public present who do not wish to be filmed or photographed, please raise your hand now so that any such person filming or photographing may film. What is photographing? New word. Any such person being filmed or photographed may be made aware. Thank you. For participants in the room, please raise your hand to indicate that you wish to contribute. When invited to speak, press the button on the right of the microphone unit and speak directly towards the microphone. Please remember to turn your microphone off once you have finished speaking. Please ensure that mobile phones, laptops and other devices are turned to silent. For participants in attendance remotely, can I request that you use the right raise hand feature within the system if you wish to contribute and to introduce yourself when called upon. Please note that only committee members present in the meeting room may vote, and we do have a full house today. Have any apologies been notified to the clerk?
Yes, Councillor Peter Hambling, Chair.
Thank you. Have any substitutes been notified?
Yes, Councillor Richard Thomas is present for Councillor Peter Hambling.
Richard, thank you for joining us today. Do members have any interest to declare on items on the agenda today? I see none. I feel that I ought to declare an interest in respect of any discussions about the bypass. It is not a registrable interest. I live near where the road may be built, and I am no different from anyone else in the particular locality. I have a dispensation to speak and take part in meetings that discuss this matter. Minutes. The minutes of the last meeting. One small item has been changed on the published minutes, just a typographical thing, but otherwise, are you content that I sign the minutes as an accurate record? Show of hands, please. Thank you very much. Questions from members of the public? 2 questions have been accepted by members of the public. Clerk, do the questioners have a supplemental question?
Yes, Chair, we've received a supplementary question from Mr. Osborne Brooks, and his question is, thank you for your detailed answer. The answer says the most recent review and update of the Corporate Risk Register took place last month. However, the Corporate Risk Register reported to the Audit and Governance Committee appears to state the risk at Q1 and not the most recent review from last month. The leader of the Herefordshire Council wrote to Government on the 1st of October 2025 that in respect of the Herefordshire Bypass, Phase 1 construction is set to be funded through prudential borrowing, which will significantly impact our revenue budget. The internal audit review for 25-26, as reported to this committee, makes no mention of the Hereford Bypass Phase 1. Will the internal and external auditors adjust their audit work and focus to reflect the risk relating to this capital road project?
Thank you, Mr. Osborne Brooks, for your question. The first part is about how up to date the Corporate Risk Register is. We still haven't had the Q2 figures, so we can't do the review of Q2 as yet. So I'm satisfied that we are up to date with that. Your second question. There's a statement there from the leader of the council. That's not a matter for this committee to consider, and I suggest you might want to ask a question at the next cabinet meeting or full council meeting. Your question is also about our review of the Herefordshire Bypass Phase 1 and the risks associated with that, and we will be discussing that later on in this meeting. So thank you for your questions. It's nice to get questions for this particular meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And we also have a question to Mrs. Morieska is actually in person.
one of the responsibilities of this committee is to monitor the development and operation of risk management processes and receive assurance from internal and external sources of the effectiveness of arrangements. That's the Constitution, para 3.5.9e brackets B. Sadly, no assurance was given to my original question. It has been reported that other councils, like Shropshire, are facing possible bankruptcy as they recognise that delivery of relief road schemes are unaffordable and they seek to write off millions of public money invested in developing them. As this administration spends 10.3 million of capital receipts working up the Southern Link Road scheme, can any information be provided to this committee and the auditors as to what actions are being taken to mitigate identified risks? And if not, why not?
Ms. Moriecka, do you mind just repeating the very last little bit? I didn't quite catch that. Thank you.
As this administration spends £10.3 million of capital receipts working up the Southern Link Road scheme, can any information be provided to this committee and the auditors as to what actions are being taken to mitigate identified risks? And if not, why not?
Yes, thank you for your question. I think this will be the subject of some discussion ourselves later on in the meeting. So if you're able to access that, hopefully that will provide a degree of assurance that you're seeking. It is a very important issue, and thank you for raising it. So, questions from councillors? No questions have been received from councillors. So I now move to item 7, updated external audit findings report. Rachel, I think this is over to you.
Thank you, Chair. We also have Grace Hawkins on the Teams link from Grant Thornton. So with your permission, I'll hand over to her to present the report.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Chair. Good afternoon, everyone. So our audit findings report that's on the agenda today is the same report that was discussed at the last committee in September. So I don't propose to go through or repeat anything that was discussed then. But however, you may remember that an element of our total fees was still to be confirmed at that point. So just bringing back this report for your information. So under the PSAA contract for which we're appointed, we're required to report all total fees on issuing the opinion to yourselves as those charged with governance. So I wanted to bring your attention to the additional fee of £23,344 on page 60 of our report for the additional investigation work that was required above and beyond the contract to ensure we had sufficient assurance both on our value for money and financial statements opinion reporting. There is also a new requirement this year from PSAA for any additional fees above the scale fee. We are required to report this in detail per grade and for the actual hours taken for a specific task. So this can be seen on page 63 of our report, and this can be reconciled directly back to timesheet data internally for us. And it's also worth noting as well that all additional fees like this are subject to scrutiny and approval by PSAA before anything is billed to the council. Happy to take any questions on that specific element, but just wanted to bring it back to you for information.
So, Grace, has that been approved by PSAA? Thank you.
It hasn't yet, so as part of the process we need management's approval, so Rachel's provided that, and then it needs to come to you as those charge of governance, and then I submit it to PSAA with that evidence and all of our reporting before they issue any approval and any questions they may have on that.
Thank you. And Rachel, you're satisfied that this is a reasonable charge?
Yeah, absolutely. Grant Thornton have provided a schedule of the hours and seniority of the level of work that's been completed that's reasonable.
Any questions from anybody? Aubrey.
Yeah. Yes, if we're on the question of fees, I note that the 24/5 accounts includes fees of £28,698 for both 21-22 and 22-3 housing benefit subsidy claims, plus £72,250 for the 2023-24. These 21, 22 and 22 housing benefit subsidy claims were also invoiced as part of the 2023-24 fees of 28,698 each. Is this because the work carried over into the two accountancy years? If so, it seems strange to me that the 21-22 housing benefit subsidy wasn't certified long before 23-4 and 24-5.
Aubrey, all this information was available for the last meeting. So we really here only looking at any changes that are being made, which is just the proposal to have an additional fee. But Rachel, are you able? Do you want to comment on Councillor Oliver's question? Are you able to?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. So this discloses the fees as we're required to, that they have to be presented to this committee as those charged with governance. The way that they're accounted for, we have to, Grant Thornton carry out an audit after the end of the previous financial year, and therefore that work is undertaken in the following financial year, and then subject to sign off, availability of audit team, availability of finance team, etc. That can occur in a subsequent financial year, and that's fairly typical. I think what's fair to say is that we had experienced some delays in earlier years that had a knock-on effect, but we're catching up now in terms of the sign-off of those subsidies and the teachers' pension claims as well, which is typical of the sector at the moment.
So the delay on certifying in one accounting year would be attributed to Herefordshire Council.
I wouldn't say that specifically, no. I think the fact that we are billed a year after relates to the period where the work was carried out, and the fact that we accrue for that then in the following year statements.
Any more questions? No, I see none. So do we just note this report, or do we approve the additional payment? I know the notes I've got say the committee notes the updated audit report and fee variation. Is that sufficient for your purposes? Thank you. Moving on then to item 8, the internal audit update report. Lucy, do we go straight to you on this one? Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Afternoon, members. Attached is the audit report for the work that the audit team have conducted on behalf of Herefordshire Council since the last meeting of this committee. In your pack this afternoon, you've got 2 final reports. One in respect of mutual employment resignation scheme, of which we've offered a low substantial assurance for that one. And we've also undertaken a follow-up report on a polygamous audit that was undertaken by your Counter Fraud and Enforcement Officer. And we've offered an advisory on that. But pleased to note that 14 of the actions that your officer recommended have been implemented. The reports, we continue to undertake audits, so we've got 3 audits that we're waiting for management response and sign off from. There are a number of audits in progress, and there's another that we've just issued as a draft report, and those reports will come to the next meeting of this committee. We continue to follow up all of your agreed actions, and since the last meeting of this committee, we've closed 15 of the agreed actions. So we've reduced the number of open agreed actions from 62 down to 47, which again is good progress. The 2 final reports that we've issued can be found on your pages 106 through to 109. Happy to take any questions.
Okay, any questions? I've got a question on the MERS report, Lucy. So it says Sorry, I'll have to go to my notes. So there's a shortfall in the MERS. So there was, I think the plan was 4.5 million, and actually the amount delivered was 2.375. So that's quite a substantial shortfall. That might be a good thing. It might be a bad thing. Have officers been asked for an explanation as to why the difference? That's my question. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So it wasn't included in the scope of the audit in terms of the success of the scheme and the delivery of the savings. However, the reporting of the achievement of that savings target was considered in the scope, hence the finding here. So £2.4 million was delivered in respect of that target in 24-25, and as the report acknowledges, the balance of that target was mitigated in 24-25. You'll note through the quarterly budget monitoring report that went to Cabinet in September, we did a review of the balance of savings that hadn't been delivered recurrently in 24-25, and in the Appendix D to that report, it identified that a further £500,000 had been delivered in respect of MERS. That's the full year impact in 25-26, so that brings the total to just under £3 million. We've reviewed the balance of that savings target, and we have identified additional saving sources now that saving will be met from, and that's explicit in that appendix to the Q1 budget report.
Okay, thanks, Rachel. That's very helpful. So, was the figure not reached, do you think, because of the lack of volunteers, maybe, or was it perhaps due to too much risk to the council of losing so much knowledge? And I suppose my sort of third element to that is, what the figure was 4.5 million was chosen. Presumably that was actually the wrong figure. It was an over expectation in order to preserve the sort of management and knowledge within the council. Do you understand my question?
Yeah, I think so. The scope of the internal audit review of this was to consider the controls in place over the application process and the consideration by corporate leadership team. And that considered a range of exemptions agreed by corporate directors. So, for example, posts that are hard to recruit and create financial pressure for the council were not part of the posts that were considered for application. For example, children's social workers and adult social workers. So the scope of the audit was around the governance of the processes that were in place, the decision making. A target was set, and that equated to roughly 100 members of staff. But part of the consideration through the applications was the risk to service continuity and loss of institutional knowledge. And there've been a number of good examples, and I think there's been some challenge of that through Scrutiny Management Board and Cabinet of how the services have responded to those changes.
Great. As you're always, you're very polite in answering a question which I probably should have left for another forum, but thank you, Rachel. There are two more questions. Go on, Robert, I'll start with you.
Yes, is that MERS programme an ongoing thing, or is it done and finished?
Through you, Chair, always available. It's a policy that the council has in place, so we will always consider applications for it. What we did in 24-25 through the MERS 24 programme was to promote that to staff as a method of accelerating savings.
Kerry? Kerry, do you want to press your...
The process is very robust, and I'm looking at the action tracking. We still have 47 items which are not cleared. 12 of them are 60 to 90 days, but worryingly 19 are over 91 days outstanding. So do we have an action plan to close those off before any new actions get put on at the front end?
Through you, Chair, we have a process whereby these actions go through directorate teams and through to corporate leadership team. So as you'll see, we removed and satisfied a number of those actions in the last quarter, recognising that we started with quite a backlog and some of those had been a historic transfer from a legacy system. So I think what I would commit to is over the course of 25-26 you'll see a significant reduction. That's definitely my plan, working with Lucy and the new team at SWAP, to reduce that element of actions that are in that older bracket.
Yeah, Mark.
Thank you, Chair. Going back to Tracy, going back to Rachel, going back to the MERS scheme and the risk associated with that. A prediction was made on the savings for last year, 4-point-something million. Is there a likelihood, because MERS is still open and it's still an option that can be used for cost cutting next year, when we've already heard there could be a significant deficit coming from central government? So MERS is still going to be on the table. Is there going to be a situation in the upcoming budget in the next few months, that MERS will again be used as a way of suggesting a saving, but it's very difficult to sort of pin, as we've just found, it's difficult to pin down what that saving will be, because you're relying on human nature. You know, some people will take advantage of it for totally abstract reasons that you could never understand. So it's difficult to really make a firm guess, isn't it, that it will save 4.3 million or 2.3 million or 1 million. So is it sensible to use MERS as an instrument of cost savings in a budget at all? Because it's going to be such a huge potential range, isn't it, between what it can save, what it might save, what it might not. And it's dangerous to sort of make a plan on your budget based on something that's has such a wide range.
Thank you. Really good question. I've spent 4 hours this morning working on development of the 26-27 budget and considering all the risks in the estimates. And as you'll imagine, across every single cost centre, the variability and the risks and the number of scenarios are vast. So to specifically answer your question, there is no plan for a targeted MERS 25 as a individual savings proposal in the 26-27 budget. We're working through a number of options to balance the budget. Obviously included in that will be a review of the services that we provide and the funding sources, and options to deliver those as efficiently and as at least cost as we can.
Right. Any more from anybody? No. It was good to have two reports, Lucy. Thank you. And there are 3 sort of waiting in the wings. I think Rachel, you are snowed under, and fortunately Stacey's now joined. So hopefully these other reports will not be delayed too much longer.
Absolutely, you have my commitment on that. What I would say is that the nature of the reports that are waiting for management sign-off, as you can appreciate, dedicated schools grant and housing benefit and council tax reductions, it's not kind of an hour just to sit down and consider the actions, and these across multiple services. So it's not a finance view in isolation. We need to consider with the revenue and benefits team, with the schools team, and colleagues across the council. So those reports have been completed by internal audit, but the natural process now is that we consider the findings from those reports, and that we plan and identify actions to respond to the risks and weaknesses they've identified.
Thank you very much. And Lucy, I guess you're quite involved with DSG at the moment. There must be a lot of councils where this sort of work is taking place. Yeah. Okay, thank you very much. So this report is also just for noting. There's no vote required. So we'll then move on to Regulatory Powers Act. Sean, you're online. Hopefully you can hear us and we can see you.
I can, Chair. Good afternoon, committee. So yes, this report is a very short report on the use of the Regulating Investing Powers Act 2000 or RIPA by the Council since October 2024. The terms of reference to this committee doesn't stipulate the scheduled reports. You will see that the recommendations are about clarifying the committee's expectations for RIPA and the reporting going forward. As the committee may remember, RIPA is only necessary for surveillance investigations where the sanction is a possible sentence of greater than 6 months and other specific offences involving alcohol and tobacco. And then when the council wishes to perform some sort of directed surveillance against the public, any request to do so we must obtain a magistrate's approval. In the last year, the council has not used RIPA at all as part of its functions. In the past, it has been used by our trading standards colleagues, mainly during investigations, but has not been necessary to engage it during the last year. We've also updated the RIPA policy that we agreed in October 2024. An officer review of that policy since has indicated there's no further changes are required. So the recommendations are principally noting, but also asking in recommendation B that some changes are set out in paragraph 8 can be made by the monitoring officer. Finally, hoping that you agree that with recommendation D, that unless there are any changes to the policy or the use of the RIPA, that this committee does not require further scheduled annual reports. Chair, I just don't, the purpose of that is not to bring to you reports which basically say that nothing has happened and we haven't used these powers. So unless the committee's got any questions, Chair, I'm more than happy to help.
Thank you, Sean. Anybody, any questions? So there are no references, no use of RIPA in the last 12 months. It seems a little pointless to have reports when there's nothing to report, but that's not in the Constitution, so we just want to change that to make sure that we're doing what we're supposed to be doing. So if you're okay with that. So the recommendation is the committee delegates certain updates. They're set out in paragraph 8 of the report. That delegate the updates to the monitoring officer, and we agree that further reports about the use of RIPA need only to be reported once RIPA has been utilised by the council. All those in favour? Thank you very much. That's carried. And the next one I think is yours as well, Sean. Item 10, whistleblowing update.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, this again is a noting report to the committee on the operation of the employee whistleblowing policy since last year. Committee may recall Public Interest Disclosure Act was introduced in '98 to amend the Employment Act '96 so that employees are protected in that they're considered to be unfairly dismissed if the purpose of their dismissal is a protected disclosure. A protected disclosure being a disclosure by an employee about the employer that they're undertaking a criminal offence, a miscarriage of justice, health and safety matter, that type of thing. Disclosure has to be true, good faith, not for gain, reasonable, etc. This committee reviewed and updated the policy in June 23, and it's not considered at this time to require any further updates. The existing policy provides an escalation process should an employee wish to make a protected disclosure. This includes the ability to make it to the monitoring officer and, if necessary, make it anonymously. Paragraph 9 to 11 of the report sums up the activity data in 24-25. There is a typo in the first line of paragraph 10. It should say that 3 of the 5 disclosures did not relate to the council. Of the other 2 disclosures made in that year, these were investigated in full by the directors in the relevant departments. Both disclosures did have substance, they were valid, and recommendations were made by the investigating officers in relation to process, policy and training. I confirm that the corrective action has since been implemented by the relevant departments. In paragraph 12 to 14, this relates to activity for the current year, so 25-26. Again, we have received 5 disclosures. 1 has been investigated and found to have no substance, and there has not been a finding made. Two investigations are ongoing, and a further 2 remain with the persons raising the concern. By that, I mean that we're waiting further information how they wish to deal with a particular matter. Chair, the recommendation is to note, but more than happy to answer any questions the committee may have.
Thank you, Sean. Anybody, any questions? Sean, the paragraph 11, there were 2 disclosures which were investigated and corrective changes made. Presumably, this means that 2 people who whistle blew made representations. They've been listened to and dealt with appropriately. Is there a follow-up with the whistleblowers to make sure they are content with the result, and is there harmony within their department or departments?
Yes, we do follow back up. We do respond back to the whistleblower as part of the outcomes. Because the whistleblower was part of the department, they were aware of the investigation and was aware that their concern had been listened to and upheld. So yes, we do ordinarily follow up to the whistleblower.
Thank you very much. Mark.
Thank you. I'm sorry if you mentioned this, but like with the RIPA policy, are you expecting to give us an annual update on whistleblowing events? We don't need it necessarily for a change of policy, but for events, is that going to be a regular item on our work programme?
I think, Sean, it's every year, isn't it? But probably not written into the Constitution.
That's correct, Chair. It's not written into the Constitution like that, but I see this report similar to what you receive in relation to complaints and the use of FOI. So this is giving you assurance that actually the policy has been looked into and it is being used. I guess that in relation to whistleblowing, I guess you may ask if there were no uses of the whistleblowing for an extended time, and then that would raise questions about, well, has it been are employees aware of that? Are we doing enough to ensure that the employees know that they can use it should they need to? So for this report, I would rather keep this on an annual report to you, if that's possible.
Yeah, I think that's a very good response, Sean. Any questions? Any further questions? So we just note that report as number 10, whistleblowing. Moving on then to item 11, annual government statement progress update. So a copy of the governance statement is out with the papers, and there is a schedule showing the activity in each area. And I must say I'm very pleased to see this report and also the actions which are taken. Rachel.
Thank you, Chair. The annual governance statement is presented as part of the statutory accounts, and the committee approved the final annual governance statement at its meeting in September, and that annual governance statement had been subject to external audit by Grant Thornton. Within the annual governance statement, we identify against each of the SIP for good principles of governance, the controls and framework that we have in place, the activity that's been undertaken throughout the year, but importantly, we also identify areas where we could strengthen governance arrangements. In this half-yearly update to Audit and Governance Committee, we take each of those actions that we've identified where we will be strengthening arrangements in the year, and we provide an update on the activity that is underway or will be completed before the end of the financial year. So Appendix A to this report takes each of those activities, planned activities, and provides that update. And I'm happy to take any questions on that progress.
Okay, so going through core principle A, anybody got any questions? Principle B? I have one. I was quite pleased to see there's an independent review being commissioned to provide assurance of the capacity and capability of the council to deliver major projects. I thought that was quite an interesting comment. So how far are we forward with this review? Is it relevant as to who is the independent reviewer? Is it a big national company? When is it being reported? I'm just interested in a little bit more detail about it, Rachel, if you can.
Yep, happy to provide some more details. So I worked with the scope with the former Director of Economy and Environment to build up the scope and to work with a externally appointed firm, a reasonable sized firm, to consider the capacity and capability of our major projects and the resources that support those, as well as an overview of the delivery of the capital programme in its entirety. That review is currently underway. We've provided significant amounts of detail, not just alongside the project management, but also in the enabling and support services around legal, finance, commercial and procurement. And I'm expecting the results of that sometime in November.
I think that would be quite an interesting piece of work. I mean, if I was within the council, I think I'd be quite interested in that, seeing what the implications are for recruitment. What kind of people do we want to recruit? What sort of training do we provide? I think it's a really interesting piece of work. Thank you. Robert, were you going to
Yes,
ask?
just a brief one. Of course, being part of this committee, I read it with interest as well. I don't know because I didn't bother to look, but is that circulated, for example, to all councillors to encourage them to read it and other key staff?
So do you mean the assurance review or the annual governance statement update?
The annual government statement, yeah.
Surprisingly, I'd love everybody to have a copy of this on their bedside table along with the statutory accounts and annual governance statement, but the readership is quite low. But I am certainly happy to share this with all members and answer any detailed questions on it.
Yeah, I mean, we could put a link to it to all councillors and encourage them to read it, because I think it's valuable that it's sort of thing we ought to know. And it suddenly occurred to me reading it, I wonder if everybody else has read this, so...
So when the statutory accounts are published alongside the draft annual governance statement, we share that through the Chief Exec's update, and there's typically at that time of year a press release as well. And then when the accounts are finalised and confirmed as true and fair by external audit, we would also highlight that. They're available on the council website, but I think you're absolutely right. It's really interesting for members to understand the governance arrangements and how we continue to strengthen those throughout the year.
Thanks.
Good. So, anything on core principle C? I was quite encouraged, Rachel, to see that over 50 schools have signed up to Let's Go Zero. I mean, that gives hope for the future, I guess. I mean, this is such an important thing. We hear the news every day, don't we, about climate change. And, so I'm just interested, any comments, further comments you want to make on this area of carbon management and the rest?
I'm afraid but I'm not able to provide a detailed update on the specific activity. In developing this update, I engage with all relevant key officers and they provide that update. But I think if you'd like some more information, I'm happy to put you in touch with those relevant officers.
Okay, thank you very much. Anything on D or E? Again, I just didn't want this E to go without some sort of comment about training. I'm a great believer in training and helping people to progress in their career. So it was all very positive when I read it, and I thought, well, what about the people who perhaps are very happy with the work they're doing and they don't want progression, that kind of thing? Are they being catered for as well, or is the environment such that if you want to get on, it's great, but if you don't want to, perhaps you don't fit here? How do people feel who don't want to progress? And Pete, yeah.
Thank you, Chair. So from the employment specific that you're referring to, we engage with all of our employees and we encourage them to develop all the way through. In fact, our employee strategy, we've had some very, very good returns who feel, I think 84% believe Herefordshire Council is a very good employer to work for. So whilst we acknowledge that for those who wish to develop, and there are some senior levels who have joined the council at age 18 and worked their way through all the way through, they are there. We also have to acknowledge that not everyone wishes to be the chief executive, and therefore they can still develop in different ways. So our employee strategy is designed around that to cater for everyone.
Thank you, Pete. Anybody, any other questions? Yeah. Rachel, yeah.
Just to add to that, in this update, we've highlighted that Aspire, Innovate programme that's targeted at, as you've described, those more ambitious members of staff looking to progress. But alongside that sits our core offer through something called My Conversation and one-to-one conversations with line managers on a regular basis. And I think that gives an opportunity for individuals to share thoughts about their career paths, or to undertake more meaningful work, or to consider the scope of their duties, etc. So that's a kind of more routine offer that I think addresses the way that employees feel about their day-to-day tasks and responsibilities.
Thank you very much. F, we're on to managing risks, which we'll talk about shortly. So any other questions from anybody on that? Otherwise, it's just for noting, no decisions. Thank you very much. So we move on then to item 12, update on risk management activity. Rachel, you're down for this one, but it's good to have Paige here to ask any questions or make part of the presentation. Over to you.
Thank you, Chair. So the remit of the Audit and Governance Committee is to receive assurance on the operation of the risk management framework and the activity that sits underneath that, with Cabinet being responsible for monitoring the corporate risks. Cabinet received the updated corporate risk register at Q1 at the meeting in September, which included a new additional risk and a review of the scores across likelihood and impact. And that review had been undertaken by corporate leadership team and members of Cabinet. So this update provides that corporate risk register as the appendix and identifies the controls and mitigations that we have in place against each of the 9 identified corporate risks. And this report also provides an update on the activity that has been undertaken in Q1 to embed the revised risk strategy and risk appetite statement across service, directorate and project risk registers, and to improve the culture of risk management across the council. It also identifies some planned work for the remainder of the financial year to continue our strengthening of risk management across the council. And I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, questions? Yeah, Aubrey, take you first, then Mark.
Yes, I mean, apart from the schools SEND problem, one of the major risks is capital projects, in particular the 30 million prudential borrowing proposed for towards the first phase of the bypass, Western bypass. What controls can we actually put in to prevent this from sprawling into the HS2 event for Hereford and be kept, you know, to that 30 million and under?
Rachel?
Yep, thank you, Chair. I'd just like to reaffirm that it's the remit of this committee not to consider specific risks, but to consider the arrangements that are in place around those risks. But what I would say in respect of that, risk 4 on the corporate risk register recognises the risk of failure to deliver major capital projects within the time frame and within budget, and it identifies a number of the controls that we have in place to provide assurance to this committee of how we're managing that risk. And that includes specific project risks, assurance that's provided to Cabinet members on a regular and routine basis, monitoring of budget, and as I've highlighted in the previous agenda item, that overarching review of the capital programme and the capacity and capability, skills, experience, etc., and the enabling functions that are required to deliver those projects. So a number of mitigations in place, but the inclusion of that risk in the corporate risk register recognises its significance for the council and its capital projects as a whole.
Yes, Peter.
Thank you, Chair. So to address Councillor Oliver's comment, it's so whilst at Cabinet we'll discuss things, as we agreed and we briefed you as a committee back in the summer, that the level of responsibility for we can give you the assurance that the level of visibility and responsibility is appropriate. So whilst we declare on the corporate level, under risk 4, we look at overall potential risk for financial issues on projects. The detail is down at the directorate or corporate or actual plan bit, which, as I say, we briefed you and you all agreed that that was the appropriate way that we should manage it, and that's how we're managing it. And Cabinet, if need be, can dig down into that level of detail.
Mark?
Thank you, Chair. I'm interested in, you say, the process of things. So there was a new corporate risk, R9, was put in, risk of financial failure of a major supplier. Could you just walk me through how that risk was identified and who was involved in deciding that it gets added to the risk register? You know, which body did it? How long did it take? How did that ball get rolling and end up on the register?
Through you, Chair, thank you. So that specific risk was added to the corporate risk register via a mechanism through corporate leadership team, and then on through Cabinet in terms of agreeing that that is significant enough to warrant inclusion in the corporate risk register. But in terms of the motivation for adding that risk, there was an instance over the summer in which one of our major suppliers went into administration, and that had an impact on the council's ability to continue to deliver service and equipment. That specific risk would not just have been managed at a corporate risk level. This is an overarching risk in respect of all suppliers, but the specific risk in relation to that supplier and the service and equipment that they provided would have been managed at a service level and a directorate level. So this had become so significant that it warranted escalation onto the highest level of risk register that the council has. In terms of engaging with suppliers, some of those risks and that risk management takes place at a contract level as part of procurement activity. The financial risks are assessed through that process. So there's a multi-layer of different elements of risk assessment that takes place and controls and actions, but the inclusion in the risk register here in the corporate risk register recognises that escalation process through the different levels of risk register at the council, and the significance of this in respect of a major supplier.
Thank you, Rachel. So isn't there an overlap there between risk 4, failure to deliver capital and major projects, and failure of a major supplier, because most of our capital projects are fulfilled by major suppliers? So to bring it up again, the Southern Link Road or Western Bypass 1, that's going to be probably contracted to a major supplier. So that means you'll be covering it, as you've just described, the contracts, the risk and all that stuff under that risk, but it also gets covered under risk 4. I mean, doesn't that get some complexity going there? Is it a bit weird having this overlap?
I think you can't manage risks in isolation, and there are a number of risks that overlap within the corporate risk register. For example, you know, demand in adult social care has a direct correlation to the risk around the financial position. So the risks within the corporate risk register do have an element of overlap, and I think that's natural. I think what's important is around the controls and the mitigations that we've identified in respect of those risks, and the risks of failure to deliver a capital programme, a capital project, would include the same controls as around the risk of a major supplier failing. So that would be around considering the financial standing as part of the tender evaluation process, etc., and carrying out those checks. So I don't think it's confusing that there are two separate risks. I think it's about risk management as an activity, a joined up activity, rather than considering things in isolation.
Peter?
Thank you, Chair. So to pick up on Councillor Woodall's points, so we have a specific incident, a supplier for adult social care. They actually go into liquidation. That, in mind, as I say, it sits at a corporate. Sorry, it sits at the department level, the directorate level. But because of the impact that had and the concerns that we had, we raised not the specifics of a medical or an adult, but we raised the concern of any major supplier to us, and that's why we brought that up to the corporate level. If you notice, our 9 corporate level risks are not specific, they tend to be generic in order that we can address them. The specifics are in the departmental or in the project level risk registers themselves. So that's why that was brought forward, because we believed we keep an open eye, we learn from ourselves, and we're an improving organisation. We actually realised that we had not considered that as a major risk, and therefore it caused enough concerns for us that we felt it would be appropriate that we should consider it.
Just asking a little bit more on on that. So when I looked at this item being added to the risk register, I thought, how much time is going to be spent now in analysing all the main contracts and putting in place plans to mitigate in case of disasters and that kind of thing. I was just a bit concerned about the resources of the council being overstretched. So how are you going to select which are the major ones, and what sort of timescale are we looking at?
I think we've certainly done an exercise to consider lessons learned in respect of the specific contract, to understand what our assessment of the particular provider was at the point the contract was awarded, and to consider whether we need to strengthen our assessments at that point. So I think that specific piece of work is underway as part of one of the controls around making sure that this risk does not increase in impact and likelihood for the council.
Richard.
Sorry. You keep talking about supplier. Well, we don't pay our suppliers in advance. So where is the big corporate risk? Only the fact that they may be supplying equipment which we've then got to go out to the market and find somewhere else. But surely we don't pay them in advance, do we?
We don't pay suppliers in advance, but this risk was around continuity of supply. So this was about getting equipment out to residents across the county, and us not having the agility to do that when a major supplier very quickly went into administration, was not able to release stock, for example, from its warehouse. So there is no financial liability in this, that we've paid for things that we haven't received. It was more about preserving that supply to our residents.
I sort of asked then, we don't just have one supplier for aids for old people or whatever. Surely we have several suppliers.
I can't comment on the specifics of all our contracting arrangements. I think I'd need some colleagues with more detailed knowledge from each service. But we go out to procure and we contract, and we undergo competitive processes to make sure that we have the right suppliers in place. We consider the quality of the services they provide and the price. But the nature of procurement in local government is that it's a rigorous process, and that we have to consider making sure that we've got the right people in place. Ensuring supply in a rural county has challenges, and we see that through our procurement activities. So we're constantly working to increase engagement, etc., to make sure that we have a variety of suppliers offering quality services that we can pick from, but that comes with challenges.
Yeah, I think, Richard, in the context of some commissioning which we do as a council, there probably may well just be one supplier. And I guess that comes into the risk analysis, risk benefit. You get a cheaper price because you have a sole supplier, and we just look at the due diligence. Where it's equipment, I think it's probably more difficult, but where it's people, it's probably a little bit less risky.
Same from my business side of the thing. I would never ever rely upon one supplier for one item. I would always have another supplier up my sleeve, even if I didn't use them on a regular basis, because being in the commercial world, the companies are going through, certainly in my last profession, building, companies are going through all the time.
Peter, and then Rachel.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. But the specifics of this company were for adult social care design, you don't go on a Yellow Pages and find 10 companies that do it. There are a very small number of companies that do it, and that's why we went with that route. Unfortunately, they were a singleton. When they actually made us aware that they were that the potential for them to implode, we therefore took steps around, and it was that activity that made us realise that this is a risk that we should be considering, not just for that, as I said, that one specific area of adult social care, but a lot of other areas, and that's why it was led in a generic way to the corporate level register.
Rachel, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. But I think you're right, Councillor Thomas, to raise that risk of over-reliance on a single supplier, and I would expect to see that on a directorate or a service level risk, in recognition of your very point that if that supplier, decides to close their business tomorrow, what's our backup plan? So I'd expect to see that within a directorate or service specific risk register.
Robert.
Yes, slightly change if all finished on that particular line, but going back a little bit to a big project like the bypass. My son was for 15 years a CEO of one of the world's biggest claims companies, civil engineering claims companies, and I've had lots of conversations with him, and he's repeatedly told me that every major civil engineering project, always something goes wrong. When something goes wrong, the big argument that claims companies settle is who pays, who sorts it out. And if you've got something like an act of God, it will normally end up on the people commissioning the project, like us. Or it could be a mistake by the contractor or subcontractors, and there's a great deal of analysis that goes in. But some of that can be mitigated by experts in claims in advance. I'm not touting for my son, he doesn't do it anymore, but that type of stuff can help you ensure that on a big project like the bypass, if something goes wrong, and they usually do, if you understood civil engineering, you'd never cross a bridge. You can make it a little more likely that the cost of that problem doesn't come to us as the commissioning organisation. It isn't just about having risk management, it's about having experts in the field of claims so that they can advise you what is likely to happen in the event of claims in certain areas. Have we gone down that route with this big project?
Thank you, Chair. I think, and Sean's on the line to confirm, but from a legal perspective, we have a skilled, highly experienced team of lawyers who specialise in contract law and construction projects, and so we rely on them throughout the process. That engagement starts at the very inception of a project to consider some of those contractual risks and how to build those into the contracting arrangements, and the action that can be undertaken in the event of contract failure or complications as the project proceeds.
Yes, and I've great confidence in Sean and his team, but it is a very specialist field. For example, in claims management, they're not just lawyers, they tend to be quantity surveyors, civil engineers, those sort of people, and it is a very specialist field. And I mean, if we had a major problem with something that went wrong, we would end up, I'm sure, engaging a claims company to work for us. It wouldn't be within this capability in-house, it's too complicated. But in advance, you can get advice as to how to structure things so that you minimise the risks that you may be able to identify. In other words, what's the likelihood of we having to pay to cover something that's gone wrong compared with the contractors? That's the point here. So I'd recommend that be looked at again. I'm not saying you must go that way, but I'd recommend you'd look at it again.
My understanding is that we engage with all those relevant experts throughout the design phase of each of these big capital projects, but I will take that away. And I think the assurance of the external review around the capacity and capability, that is considering all elements of a project from cradle to grave. So I'd expect it to cover some of those elements that you've just highlighted.
Yes, Kerry.
Rachel, R9 is the risk of financial failure of a major supplier. I think I'd be more comfortable, given the increase, the upturn in businesses going into financial crisis, when you do due diligence on a new supplier, new contract, some of the data is 18 months, 2 years out of date, and anything can happen very quickly in the financial world. I think I would prefer the word key or critical than major, because I think we're going down the route of the size of the supplier being the issue, rather than the importance to us continuing to deliver the goods and services. And it could be quite a small supplier that ends up quite critical. And a business can go into receivership over a matter of a few weeks. And I've seen that charities and other businesses in Herefordshire with the sudden withdrawal of an NHS grant or other funding. So I think it's the key and critical is the importance rather than the major size of it for risk.
Thank you. We'll certainly take that away and raise it with Cabinet in our review of the next. But I think you highlight a really important point there around the financial assessment, because you're absolutely right. Companies' house information that we might rely on is often out of date, but it's within our discretion to ask for additional information. The skill is in knowing what information to ask for and to receive assurance on it. So typically within a major contract or a key or a critical contract, we might ask for business plans, we might ask for some external assurance of those business plans, and we might ask for cash flow forecasts. So we would not just look at historic information, because you're absolutely right, it's out of date. It's also being creative about the other information that we might consider. So news headlines, scouring the sector, considering just those elements that aren't the typical, the routine, and we'd consider those at different points in time as well. So a credit check at different points in time, but we're always looking for new opportunities to build that source of assurance around our arrangements.
That is reassuring, because it's existing suppliers can also end up going into a problem. Good.
Rachel, I'm going to go back to the road, the bypass. Councillor Oliver has talked about it, and Councillor Highfield, and there are a number of public questions. So I guess I feel a little bit uncomfortable about just saying we're looking at the process. And provided the process is there, we should be satisfied. There was obviously a lot of public concern about it. And as mentioned by one of the questions, there's inevitably overspend. In the case of Shropshire, it seems that they are potentially going to become insolvent as a result of decisions about the road going around Shropshire. And they're potentially going to have to pay central government back grants of, I think, sort of 50 million or something like that. And I don't want people to say that, that this committee wasn't diligent enough in looking at, just in case there are risks. I want to feel that we are doing the best and asking the right questions for residents. There may be questions which should be asked at full council and Cabinet, but I would like to ask them here. And there are two elements that really concern me still. One is that the only paper that talks about risk that I have seen, which I think most councillors have seen, is the outline business case for the SLR, which I think is quite shallow. We've been promised later on, middle of next year, a full analysis. It's a long way away. There's £10 million in the budget being spent. That's being spent before all this risk analysis has taken place. And that sort of leads me to the second element, which really about the value for money statement. We've been in a great position the last couple of years that the auditors have come in and given us the value for money statement. They're happy with it. There were years when this council did not have the comfort from the auditors to say that there could be a value for money statements, and that was related to the last large road building project, which is the City Link Road. And with that project, there was no value for money certificate for some time, until a lot of work had been done on exploring where the money had gone. So I've got two concerns. One is what seems to be in the public domain about the management of risk is poor, to be honest. And the other is we don't want to be faced with a situation where the auditors come in and they ask questions about value for money, and it can't be satisfied. So we end up going backwards. So I think this committee wants real assurance that the risks associated with the project are being fully assessed, considered and mitigated. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So in terms of the specific project that you have highlighted and the concerns that you have, I don't think they're questions for this committee. I think those questions are more appropriately directed towards Cabinet or scrutiny. But in terms of the risk management arrangements that do fall under the remit of this committee, what I can provide information and assurance on is that project risks are managed via project risk registers with specific oversight by senior responsible officers and Cabinet. And in respect of this particular project, I can confirm that those arrangements are very much in place. They're regular, they're routine, they are effective in highlighting and managing risks. In terms of external and internal audit and their sources of assurance, in the internal audit plan that was approved by this committee last month includes a follow-up audit of decision-making and governance, and that's aligned to corporate risk 4, which is around the major projects and the risks to delivery and timeline. An external audit as part of their statutory work will test expenditure in respect of capital projects, and they will consider in line with their value for money work as directed by the National Audit Office under the 3 frames of economy, efficiency and effectiveness of use of resources, financial sustainability and governance. They will consider all of those elements of the Council's operations, delivery of the Council plan and the capital programme, and I would expect they would consider that, and in fact they do that each year, and they make that report to committee and provide that assurance.
Thank you for that full reply. Pete, I'm not going to ask you to respond. I think there's a risk of it going into the political domain, so I will leave it to that. Has anybody got any further questions? Okay, thank you very much. So the purpose of that, so we just we note the report and approve the frequency of future risk management updates quarterly for the time being. Thank you. So I move then on to item 13, the energy from waste loan update. I think there's some positive news here. Rachel, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. This is an annual report to committee, and this provides assurance that the loan arrangements that are in place, the repayments have been made in line with those arrangements, and that there is compliance with the covenants and key ratios that we've established as part of those initial arrangements. So the report highlights that the repayments have been made as planned over the year. It confirms that the loan balance is reducing. The loan balance as at the October 2025 is 27 million. And that the ratios, which are the covenants imposed by the lenders, which is us and Worcestershire County Council, which provide an early warning mechanism. Those ratios look backwards, look at current information as well as future financial information around cash flow projections. They're reported each 6 months in June and December, and this report confirms that all of those ratios have been complied with throughout the year.
Thank you, Rachel. So looking at the various ratios, I think, unless I'm misreading it, they're actually all improved. And that came as a bit of a surprise to me, given that there's been a change of ownership. And I'd expect the new owners to have wanted to make more money out of it or draw money out, but it doesn't seem to have been the case. So it looks to me that we've got some good new partners working on the project. Any questions from you? Yes, Robert.
I just wanted to make it as simple, because there's a lot of, technical speak in this. Is that project working? Yes or no?
So this isn't a project, it's a financing
I know,
arrangement.
We've lent money to people so they will run a waste system, and we've done it with Worcestershire. Are they working? I mean, are they working okay? It's not going to fail, it's going along okay. That's all I need to know.
Yeah, so I think you're asking about the contract management and the effectiveness of that contract, and we manage.
We're talking about risk. Is there any chance it's going to fail?
Not to my knowledge. I'm not the contract manager for the waste contract, but there are no concerns that have been highlighted through any of the relevant channels.
Thank you.
I think, Robert, if you want to get a review or you're concerned about it, then we should refer it to one of the scrutiny committees to look at it. But I personally, I don't think that's necessary. I think it's looking pretty good to me.
Well, we were talking about risk, and I just wanted to know if from our point of view, could we see any risk of it going wrong? And the answer, no, that's great.
Aubrey.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, it's concerning the loan repayment, which is roughly being repaid at 1 million a year. The balance in October 25 is 27 million, and the loan is due to be paid in full in January 29. It will still be 24 million at that point at the current rate of repayment. Are we certain that to repay that loan and won't want to extend it?
I think under the current arrangement, we have not been advised that there is a risk to them repaying as per the current terms.
Yes,
Right, thank you. I hope that reassures slightly. The other point regarding this contract is that it directly affects our carbon neutrality process, as the burning of this waste is highly, is a high carbon dioxide issue when the waste is burnt going into the atmosphere. So we with Worcestershire are contributing to climate warming in this occasion. I don't know whether there's any possibility of being able to use carbon capture to mitigate this risk.
Again, Rachel, is this something for a scrutiny committee, do you think, if committee members have these sort of detailed questions?
I think your question relates to the waste management contract and the activity that's undertaken at the Energy from Waste site in Hartlebury in Worcestershire. I think this item is providing assurance around the specific loan arrangement in place, but I'm happy to pass on some of your queries to the relevant service leads, and they can provide an update for you.
And I'm happy to ask that question in the Environment Scrutiny Committee, of which I'm a member.
Yeah, that'd be excellent. Okay, so any more questions on this item? I see none. So we note the report. Thank you, Rachel. That's very helpful. Item 14 is the committee work programme. Jen has provided a summary for us. Our next meeting is not until January. It looks to be quite a full meeting then, including constitutional updates in preparation for the AGM, I guess. Jen, any comments on the? No? Okay. Thank you very much. Pete?
Just one thing on the agenda, it's got date 27 January 2025, so obviously it should be 26.
Yes, a bit backwards, yes. Yeah. Okay, so we note the programme, thank you. So date of next meeting, yes, thank you, Peter. The date of next meeting, 27th of January 2026. Thank you for attending. Please can I ask the live stream be stopped?